Hey, good evening, everyone. Just wanted to do a quick tank update and talk about some findings that I've sort of discovered just experimenting with sea monkey tanks. So, for those of you guys that have followed me on social media or watched some of my videos, you probably know I started growing sea monkeys last December on Christmas Day. Uh, and then I did, a few decades ago when I was a kid, too. But I started the hobby again last December, and we've been growing them since. And as you can see here, we are up to 8 tanks. Look at that: one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. We got the Sea Monkeys Executive Supersize Suite, the Magicquarium, the Ocean Adventure, the Big Show, the three mini worlds there: the Moon Mini World, the Hang Ten Beach Mini World, and Sea Monkeys in the City. And then on the far right in the front there is the Japanese Magic Castle, which is one of my favorites. I like that, aside from that tiny opening at the top. But it is a cute looking tank. Um, so if you've watched some of my other videos, you probably know we had a couple tanks crash over the past couple months, which is sad. Um, I love these guys, but you can't get too attached to them. They don't live super long like some other pets. They're not a turtle or a cat or a dog or anything like that. I've seen some people say that sea monkeys can live up to 2 years. I have not seen that personally, but maybe a colony can last that long. I don't know. But they don't live forever. Anyways, they're still fun. I love them. And I sort of look them as pets and sort of like a science experiment, so we can learn. So I've done some testing to see what helps them to grow the best, that sort of thing. Um, and what I want to talk about today is heat and temperature, water temperature. So I'm heating my sea monkeys right now with a big black mat. You can sort of see it here. All these tanks are sitting on this big black mat. It heats up. Uh, it's meant for plants. You're supposed to put plant pots or whatever on there. I don't know anything about growing plants, but that's what it's meant for. But it's one big, huge mat that could fit 8 tanks on it, and you plug it in and it heats up. And then it's got a thermostat, which is sort of cool. And now the thermostat I've got set high because the temperature that it reaches does not make the water that same temperature, because that heat has to pass through layers of plastic or glass in this mess back there, and so the water doesn't get that hot. So here's the thermostat. I've got it mounted on the wall there, so that mat is, yeah, I don't get it. I don't think it's jumping, zero point 0.4 degrees like that, but around 106 degrees or so, right? Fahrenheit. And it's heating right now. I think I've got it set to 108, so it's going to keep heating until it gets up to 108. That being said, these tanks are not that hot. They are in the 70s, right? Um, it's probably 70 degrees ish air temperature in this room, and then being on that mat raises the water temperature a couple degrees. Every little bit helps. So, what I think I've discovered is that warmer temperatures, we know that that helps them hatch faster, right? Sea Monkey's documentation that comes with the tanks tells us that. There's a big temperature chart that comes with most of the tanks. Now, a lot of you guys have probably seen that. I guess I can show you. Forgive my messy room here. This is my tote of Sea Monkey crap. Somewhere in here, I'm sure I've got a temperature chart. Maybe not. Oh, it's probably in here. Oh, I see one. All right. Here we go. This is what I was talking about. This comes with a lot of the tanks now. So if you look on the left there, 75 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, best for fastest hatching, right? And they're basically saying, if it gets, cooler than that, it's going to take longer to hatch. If you're below 65 degrees, it's going to probably take a week plus to hatch, right? I found that to be fairly accurate. That being said, I just thought about that for hatching. Now, their growth and development after hatching seems to be dependent on the heat as well. So, my biggest tank, the one in the back left there, I call it SMES. That's Sea Monkeys Executive Supersize Suite. Bought that one last December from the Transscience website, sea-monkeys.com. I love that tank. It's cool. It looks like a big, huge tropical drink glass that you put a bunch of straws in and share with friends, pre-COVID. And definitely had a few of those drinks in my lifetime. I swear that thing was a drink glass, and they probably bought them from some restaurant supplier. But anyway, it looks cool, right? It's on, a heating mat, just like the rest of these. And because that was so big, it wasn't heating up as much as I wanted. So for the longest time, I did have a separate heater that was submersible that was in there. And because of that, this one had a warmer temperature than any of the other tanks. Now, we've got 8 tanks here. Aside from the moon and the city, the rest of these 6, so we got the SMES, Magicorium, Ocean Adventure, Big Show Movie Theater, the Hang 10 Beach, and the Japanese Magic Castle. All of these colonies started on the same day, which was a week ago from yesterday, so 8 days ago. 8 days ago. And I put in packets 1 and 2 on the same day, which was last Thursday. Today is Friday of the following week, so it's been 8 days. So all 6 of those tanks, Sea Monkeys, same age. It's give or take a day, depending on what day they hatched, right? But the packets were put in on the same day, all within an hour of each other. Now, because of the way these tanks are designed, the water temperatures have been different. Even though they're all sitting on the same mat and stuff like that, I did have the heater, as I mentioned, placed in the SMES to raise that water temperature much higher than the other ones too. This little digital thermometer is fantastic. So you can see the SMES right now, 78.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, it's not 106, right? So that's what it's at. And that's from sitting on the heating mat. Anyways, that one was warmer. Now let's look at those sea monkeys in here. I've got fingerprints all over that, but hopefully you guys can see we've got some big ones in here. I mean, they're not huge, but look at that. There's a male down there at the bottom. They're decent size, especially for being a week old, right? And these guys were much warmer than the other tanks. Let's take a quick look at the other tanks. Here's the Magicorium. They don't necessarily, I call these ones like teenage sea monkeys, right? They're not the acorn-shaped babies anymore, but they're not full-grown adults. Most of those still can't tell the gender yet. A couple of them you can. Okay. Let's look at the Ocean Adventure. Maybe a little bit bigger in this one. On average. Yeah, there's some right there. Sorry, sometimes it's hard to focus this when we're recording, but a little bit bigger. Here's one I really want to show you guys. Okay, so this is the Big Show Movie Theater tank. You can see those guys pretty well. They're pretty small compared to the other tanks we just looked at. Now remember, all these colonies started on the same freaking day. These ones are relatively small. Let's go up to the movie theater tank here. Or excuse me, to the Magic Castle tank. These guys are relatively small too. Maybe a little bit bigger than the movie theater one back there. But not as big as the SMES. Not as big as the Ocean Adventure. Alright, we're going to skip this one because these guys have been around longer. Alright, now here is the Mini World Hang 10 Beach. Relatively small sea monkeys in here. Now again, all these are about a week old. Now let's think about this. Aside from the SMES back there, which, as I've mentioned multiple times now, much warmer, yielded bigger sea monkeys. And that's because we had an additional heater in there, right? The rest of these, they're all sitting on the same heating mat. They're all being heated the same way. The room temperature is obviously the same. They're all sitting in the same room. But these tanks are obviously designed very differently. So when you've got this one, which I think has the smallest sea monkeys in it, the bottom of the tank, the bottom of this clear plastic down here is what's touching the heating mat. Look, we get another 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 inch up of plastic before it even touches the water. So that's going to be more difficult to heat that water. It's going to heat it slower and it's not going to get quite as warm. Makes sense, right? So, and I've tested the temperature. The temperature in there was a little bit cooler than the others. Now, when you look at the movie theater tank, the Big Show, if you guys aren't familiar with this tank, let me show you how it's designed. Let me see if I can prop my phone up here. All right. So, this tank, this comes off here. Oops, there goes the screen. You see that? Now the bottom of the tank sits about 1.5 inches up on top of that base over here. So hey, we got a lot of sea monkeys in there. That's great. But they sit way up on this thing. They're probably not getting any heat from that heating mat, because there's no way that heat is going through all that plastic and getting up into that tank, right? And these ones are small. Now this one, some of you guys might not be familiar with the Ocean Adventure tank. I got it from a buddy in Singapore, and I'm not sure where else they sell it, or if it was even sold elsewhere, but it was sold at Toys R Us there. It's basically just a big cylinder. I put that castle decoration in there, bought that at a local pet store. But if we look at this tank, the way it's designed, the water, goes all the way to the bottom, which is just, plastic there. And that is touching the mat. And again, the ones in here are a little bit bigger than some of the other tanks. You see those guys swimming in there? They're bigger. A lot bigger than these guys. They have the same freaking birthday last Thursday. All right? And that's because, that is closer to the heat. The bottom of the tank where the water starts is closer to the heat. This tank is heating up more than this one. And this one's sort of in the middle. This is the Magicquarium, which is pretty much the same thing as an ocean zoo. A lot of you guys are probably familiar with ocean zoos. That's the most common sea monkey tank. Pretty much the same damn thing here. Again, the bottom of where the water starts is a little bit off the ground, but not quite as high as some of the other ones. Not nearly as high as that one, and probably not as high as this either, right? You can remember the water starts above the yellow part there. Now with here, the water obviously starts, above that blue part. Not quite as high. And, or maybe it's about similar to this one. And again, these ones aren't quite as big as here, and definitely not as big as these guys. Look at her, yeah. So I just found that really interesting, that I really think the heat has a whole lot to do with how fast they grow. And they seem to do okay in significant heat. That chart that we were looking at, that I dropped or something, I don't know where it is now, but it showed temperatures up to, I think, 80 degrees. And they obviously do fine. This one, I've gotten it up to 91 degrees consistently in the past, and they thrived, And now, I don't know what the maximum temperature tolerance they have is. Please don't go boil your pets and then come yell at me and say, hey, John, I cooked my sea monkeys. No, please don't do that. I don't want to hear about that. That's sad. But I'm telling you, from my experience, I have gotten that tank up to 91 degrees or so, and they were fine. I took out the heater that was in there because it didn't have a real good control on it. It was starting to get a little bit warmer, and I started worrying about, them getting too warm. So now that's actually sitting on 2 heating pads, which has been keeping it consistent, between 78 and 81, depending on room temperature and depending on if I have all these lights on or not, too. I got grow lights, I've got a lamp, I've got all sorts of lights in this room. If the lights are off for a few hours, it does drop a couple degrees. But if they're on all day, like when I'm working in here, they stay pretty warm. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about. That's what I wanted to show you today. Wanted to talk about heat and keeping the sea monkeys warm. If you want bigger sea monkeys, which I think most of us do, I don't know. I like it when they're big, They're cute as babies for sure, but hey, if they're cute little babies for a week and then they start getting bigger, I think that's fantastic. So if you want bigger sea monkeys, raise that temperature. do it safely, monitor your temperature, pick up one of these thermometers. This just has a little wire you can see here, and it just sticks right in the tank. And it works really, really well. I think it was like $10 or something. So most of us should be able to afford that, I think. So pick up one of these, measure the temperatures, raise the heat, get bigger sea monkeys. And if anybody has any ideas on how to heat these things in different ways other than what I've tried, I'd love to hear them. Send me a message or comment below the video if you're watching this on YouTube. I'd love to hear your success stories, or if you've had other things that didn't work. Hey, let's learn from that too. I'd love to learn from positive or negative experiences that you may have had and share with all of us. So this heating mat seems to work really well. In-tank heaters work well too, as long as you can control the temperature, which I found to be difficult. But if anyone knows of a very, very small, like a fishbowl sized in-tank heater that you can control the temperature on, send me a link if it's available on Amazon or wherever. I'd love to buy it and try it with this mess over here. I bought one on Amazon this week and it came yesterday, and it just ended up being too big. I didn't even stick it in there. I returned it already. It just looked too big, but it was the right idea. It was submersible, fully submersible, plugs in, and you set it to whatever temperature you want, and it stays at that temperature, which sounds ideal. I'd love to set the temperature on there to about 88 degrees and just leave it like that. I think that's a really good temperature for these guys. But yeah, again, all the Sea Monkey tanks seem to be doing well. Even though 6 of these tanks all started on the same day, we got different size sea monkeys, and I believe that is due to heat. The other variables were controlled. All of the packet number 1 water purifier and packet number 2 the eggs, they were all from the same sets. You've seen those starter kits that come with a packet 1, 2, and 3 and a spoon. You can find them at Hobby Lobby. That's where I like to buy them. You can find them on eBay. You can find them on Amazon. I'm sure there's other places you can buy them too. But all of them came from those exact kits. None of them were old. None of them came with tanks or anything, because I wanted all of them to come from the same kits so we can, test this out and see how they do. So I'm happy to report that the sea monkeys are alive. They're doing well in all these tanks. And the ones that are warmer are bigger. Pretty interesting. All right. Have a good night, guys.